And everybody stayed. But I think they stayed for the right reasons.
That's great. What about the rest of you guys?
You know, for us, my original co-founder, you know, it was a trip to Maryland to hang out with the athletes and have those conversations. Since then, we've been able to, you know, we have representation in the East Coast, the West Coast, upper, like northern West Coast. We're about to get some representation in Canada. We have some representation across the pond. So for us, it's been fairly easy from a transitional standpoint. Through that transition, we did lose one original co-founder, and you know, life happens.
Chris or Josh?
One of the things that we really prioritize and work hard at my company is the company culture. You know, just like Kirk said, I love my employees. They're like family members. So the way we've kind of been able to manage this is, you know, there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot of openness with our employees. I believe it's better for them to know the good, the bad, and the ugly than for them to imagine what it is, because whatever they imagine is going to be wrong for sure. So the team ultimately could see things, and the way we just really analyze and talk about things, there was never a shock. And the other thing that I take a lot of personal responsibility for is everyone has a role in the company. And one of my roles, I believe, is to have my finger on the ultimate health of the company. And if I see things that is going to jeopardize my ability to keep every one of these people passionately, happily employed for the next 10 years, I have to do something. That's what they're relying on me to do. So, you know, I kind of take really hard issues to them, and we just throw it out there. And if it needs a month of discussion, we do it. If we can all come to a consensus within a day or two, and that's how it's worked for us. And I think the company is fired up and on board as that approach.
Yeah, for us, I think, you know, for me being the sole, you know, first co-founder that was involved with the industry before this, you know, even happened, I had gotten involved, you know, 8 or 9 years ago with just fixing phones, so I'd always stayed in touch, and I'd already had the background in it. You know, I just kind of brought them on as friends that I went to school with, and it's like, you know, they had a passion for, you know, doing similar things, and I felt they were the right people, and they just trust me, and, you know, the fact of knowing the right way to move, and we were all on board with trying the new thing anyways, but, you know, we knew where the software platform was going, and we seen where the parts were taking us, and, you know, everybody wanted to make the move for, you know, the more revenue and to grow quicker, so.
It sounds like it's worked out pretty well for most of you. Yeah, that's great. Good stuff. Hopefully you guys have some questions. Who wants to start? Anybody got any questions right off the bat? Yeah.
So my question is simple. When I was younger, or not even younger, I've been involved with Amway, and there was a very successful Amway founder named Dexter Yeager who says that success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. So I would ask you is, do you agree with that, and what would you define success as being, and is it a choice or is it a matter of luck?
You know, I've always lived under a philosophy in life that family, friends, love, and wealth. So they all intertwine. You know, if you have a great family, you have great friends. If you have great friends, you have great love. If you're a wealthy individual, you just go down the line. It all works out. From a success standpoint, we're changing every day as a company. There's some things going on. Francis knows of some of them, but you know, we can't talk about it publicly. That will fundamentally change even the trajectory that we're doing now. So every day, even when you have a successful pivot, you have things going on, you have to look at the market and the opportunities that are sitting in front of you. And sometimes you just got to jump off the cliff again and do it.
You know, Aaron sounded like a Venn diagram. I saw Jim Collins speak one time, and he drew a Venn diagram, the guy that wrote Good to Great. You read that book? And he drew 3 circles on the board. It's like, what are you good at? What do you love doing? Sometimes we think those are the same things. I went to law school, practiced law for almost a decade, and I can tell you there are a lot of people in my profession that are good at it and hate it. And then the other circle was, can you make a living at it? And he basically said all of us are looking for the intersection of both, if you're good at it and you love it and it makes you a nice living, like that's the sweet spot, right? We're kind of all in pursuit of that.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback on that real quick. Most people think because I run a sports company, I'm a huge sports fan. In the end, I've never been a sports fan. My co-founder is a massive sports fan. So when I get the opportunity to hang out with, I have to Google every one of them. I have no clue who they are, which is comical running a sports company. But in the end, what I really love enjoying about what I do is I get to give somebody access to something they've never had the ability to, or they otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity. If you look at celebrity athletes, 1% of the 1% actually get marketing deals. The other side of that, they're looking for a small deal from Under Armour, or they're trying to do a car wash deal or whatever. So we're helping them create access in a longer term revenue stream based on their current profession moving forward. So for me, it's really providing a new opportunity to somebody that otherwise wouldn't have it.
I would just add that one of the pillars of what we believe drives success, you said is it luck or whatever, there's a famous quote, I don't know who, I can't attribute it, but luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And obviously none of us have crystal balls, so that we wouldn't be here if we did, but you have to have a belief, you got to have a vision on where that's going to go, and then you got to put yourself in a position, and yeah, there's some luck. Is the timing right? Are you going to meet the right people at the right time? But if you're not prepared and you don't put yourself out in the opportunity, I find it very challenging to imagine a pathway to success in that scenario.
Ken, you have a question?
As I listen to you, there's two of you that are kind of more defined, less uncertainty in the market. You know where you're kind of going. There's two of you that are trying to create new value for society from the technology that comes, right? That's really kind of interesting. So the question I have is, how has the St. Louis ecosystem helped you, or why have you decided to stay here to uncover the uncertainty that's appropriate to you that creates a good business model?
There's a helpful banner right to your left.
Yes.
Shameless plug.
I would say ITEN's it was a big thing for us, especially early on. We went through
We liked you when you were a tele.
Yeah, they liked us when we weren't sports. I think we were the 21st company to go through Mottern and graduate.
Yeah.
That really helped us. This is not my first startup. I've raised money before in the early days where you can make phone calls and get like big money. Going through this side of it, without a program like ITEN, we would have been, I don't even know where we would be. The St. Louis ecosystem has helped in some attributes, and it's been harmful in other attributes, given just location and some other things. So I think for every entrepreneur, you have to look at what your local ecosystem looks like, how it can help you, and take the most advantage of it.
I know for me, I hope this doesn't sound cynical. There's not a lot of exploration money here in town, and when I say not a lot, I mean none. And
I got a buck.
And and so when I made that reference earlier to like what Twitter started as and what they pivoted to, right? And those companies, you are forced to be lean, like an MRFer, lean, lean. And that can be an advantage, Sometimes I wish we had 20 developers, but we'd make a big pile of manure because it would say, oh yeah, we can do this feature and everybody, but sometimes the lack of money has caused us to put our, to be lean and very judicious with. So now we're in a position, now that we're, kind of getting into the start. So we're at 1.0. People are shocked. They're like, really, you can do all of those things with $500,000? And You know, in California, they probably say, well, I can hire one engineer, I can hire 2 engineers with $500,000. We can we can launch a company and run it for a year with $500,000 because this ecosystem has forced us to know lean in ways we didn't necessarily want to know it.
But to be real, you would take more money as well.
Absolutely.
So you're turning down money. Okay.
If you have your checkbook, he'll take it.
Anybody else have a comment?
That's right, the broadcast.
So I would say, first of all, I think St. Louis is a great town. I think it's a great town to raise a family. I think the employee pool, when you find the right ones, you can't ask for better employees. They're loyal, they're dedicated, they've got great values. So as a family guy with young kids, I love St. Louis. In terms of the ecosystem here in St. Louis, I count my blessings every day, literally, because if I had to do this 10 or 15 years ago, and before ITEN was in play, and before the Venture Cafe was in play, I guess I'll put it this way. I ran a successful business for years, and I thought I knew what business was all about. I didn't know anything. I mean, the last 12 to 18 months has been like a daily MBA program, and it's because of this ecosystem that's developed here. So, again, timing, opportunity meets timing and preparation. What a great time to be in St. Louis with what's going on to support entrepreneurs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree too. Being part of ITEN, being at T-Rex, we've graduated from Capital Innovators. Being involved and having just a support of whether it's mentors from ITEN, we're just meeting other people at events like this. There's a huge opportunity to grow and to meet other people who are doing the same thing or want to do the same thing you're doing. And maybe they haven't made the leap yet, but whenever they talk to people and see that, there's good backing here, people that can help you and are willing to help you. I think that's the biggest thing that's helped us. We all were IT background, we didn't know anything about running a business. Being at T-Rex and meeting all these people and having other companies around us to support us and help us go through things they've already been through, without having to go out and get support elsewhere. They're already there and they help you. And back to what he was saying about the ecosystem, there's plenty of things that are good, but for us being a product company and having to rely on inventory and other things, we're different than a software company that doesn't have to worry about stuff like that. So we found it a little bit harder to raise money to where other companies have been able to do it, but we're still here. We're going to continue going, and there's a lot of support that's going to help us get there.
So let me follow up on that. And your checks are all in the mail, so I appreciate the comments about ITEN. But yes. But let's. You guys said some really positive things, but underlying that is, how fearful are you as an entrepreneur in this ecosystem? And you mentioned earlier, Chris, about investors want you to be laser focused, and so if you've got a deck that's changed and you're a little different now than what maybe a few of them got to know you as, how fearful are you as an entrepreneur in an environment here in St. Louis that isn't exactly very fault tolerant of companies that change their direction or do different things? Does that cross your mind as you go out and talk to investors, and how much of that is a detriment to thinking about pivoting in more bigger or broader ways?
In my mind, it's all about telling the story. If you're going to pivot and you can tell the story appropriately, it can show some strength and some agility. And almost every company pivots. Kirk's listed big name companies who pivoted. So, but when you think about the investor and the negative side of St. Louis, what causes me to lose a lot of sleep at night is there are like 2 or 3-ish, games in town where you can go. And, if you get blocked out of those for whatever reason, that's what really scares me.
Yeah. Kirk?
Yeah, I think that's true. You hear about, the musician that gets the wrong record. Like the only thing worse than no money is like the wrong money. It's like money with a board member that's going to push you in a direction that it may not be a direction of right or wrong. It may be a direction of fit. Like you have the talent pool to do this thing, and I envy the companies that you'll read an article and they'll say, well, we were choosing between these 4 venture capital funds and we felt like the folks at Union Square fit us better. I'm like, oh God, what would that be like?
Yeah. Jim, you got a question?
Yeah, I think I want to follow up. I think that Kurt, it was a comment that you made as this last part of the discussion began, which was, I think, something to the effect is there's not much exploration money in St. Louis. And so while you've all been busy talking, I have been not paying attention but thinking about a few things about that, because I think that's a really interesting statement, particularly if you compare it to our biotech industry here in the biotech community, where you've got a lot of exploration money, a lot of it coming from the universities. There are also some VC firms in town that specialize in biotech. And then even in ag tech, where you've got some stuff going on there. So I think that we don't really have that same depth of really R&D around tech. So the tech ecosystem here is really made up of a lot of onesie-twosies startup companies. It's not really, doesn't have the strong underpinnings here like the biotech. So I was just kind of thinking about that while you guys were saying something else.
These guys are just great. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes when I want to go to a happy place, I just read the Y Combinator application. Just the questions they ask are just so not Midwest, and I have answers to those questions, and that's why, and they're more exploratory questions.
We've raised money in St. Louis. We continue to raise money. We're about to close some other additional capital here in multiple 6-figure range. What we find and what we've been challenged with is we're a startup, we're a tech company, and usually some of the first due diligence questions in St. Louis versus another area would be, give me 3 years of financials, and we're going to base you off of that deal. And in a tech startup, that's just not how you're valued. So you constantly fight the traditional style of valuation and fundraising. It's very easy to leave St. Louis and find a fund or an individual somewhere else on the coast that understands it. So as an ecosystem, we have a lot of learning to do and bringing more sophistication in from a tech investment perspective. And without that educational opportunity, if it's through an ITEN or it's another organization, we're going to really hurt the ecosystem here eventually.
And I wonder if we're losing biotech companies here as fast as we're losing tech companies here. And I'd be willing to bet that no, we're not. Yeah, we're not. The companies that we're losing are the tech companies because we don't have this depth of understanding of the industry.
I don't know one startup in St. Louis that I'm familiar with that is not looking for money outside St. Louis to move because it's that hard to raise money here.
Other questions? We got time for a couple more. I can follow up. Are you guys, following up on that comment, Aaron? So you're able to raise some money here.
Yeah.
You're able to find, it's not necessarily probably, I would think, the usual suspects or the usual path. What have been the mechanisms to get people to pay attention to what you're doing?
Mine have come from 20 years of networking in St. Louis. It's money we've raised. We've raised some Billiken money, but we've raised primary other money we've raised is through other relationships outside the ecosystem. We've built that relationship for decades with, and know us and seen the struggles and seen what we've accomplished. I mean, we're a year-old sports firm. We were the presenting company at the Super Bowl for the Players Networking event. That's massive traction in a year. So for us, it's always came down to the relationships. And in the sports world, it's all relationships. I can't do a SaaS model calling players and calling colleges. No. Like, all our deals, we have a phone call, hey, go meet Aaron. Okay. And it's all relationships.
One of the things I think it would, if Chris Sacca, I follow him on Twitter, I think he was the first investor in Twitter, one of the first. And I've seen 2 YouTube videos where he's taken Q&A and they've said, what's the biggest investment mistake you've ever made? And I think the room thinks he's going to say, I invested in such and such.com and all my money. And he always says Airbnb because he didn't invest. So one of the great things about St. Louis is we're a banker town. We're a financial services town. And the general orientation of financial services is risk. And tech investing is not, it's a different type of risk investing. The biggest risk for Chris Sacca and for Mark Andreessen or Fred Wilson is, am I going to miss the next Facebook? That's what they're worried about. They're not worried about losing $500,000. And, if we could take the DNA that we have, it's very solid and financial, and kind of weave some of that into it, like, that's the question that I'd love for somebody to ask. Like, what are you worth on your best day? Is this, and that's the like, how do we turn this into $1 billion? Not that it's all about money, but we spend a lot of time on downside, and it's kind of like they say, like, if all you look at is the downside, eventually that's where you're going to get. And so I wish the ecosystem would look a little bit more and value the top end. So.
Okay.
Another way to look at it is we're just maybe almost mid-stage of maturity.
Yes.
And we're not meant to be there yet in terms of discovery, because we haven't created the massive number of exits that create new money that's more risk averse. And maybe we should just celebrate where we are and work like hell. Because if you guys compare where you are now in terms of what we have with ITEN and all the other things that are going on versus where we were in 2007 or
massive.
2000, we're very different in terms of our entrepreneurial IQ.
Yeah.
So maybe we just keep the mojo going and look for a little luck.
And that's why I use the weaving thing. I love what we have. I think we can use.
Well, there are people
Yes.
that are new money
What's the
that's
question?
coming in and kind of.
Where we are in the ecosystem right
Okay.
now, and celebrating the fact that we're well ahead of where we were just 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I think the mojo, the
Yeah.
momentum is pretty good.
And hope for a little bit of luck. And so one final pass through the panel here. Is there something on pivots or in your company that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about? Is there any final thought that you wanted to leave with the audience? Because I think your stories are all really interesting, and I love that you guys are in the middle of it too. I think this is really fresh, important info. So anything else you guys want to say? Leave it, you guys have the last word.
If you're a startup, you're going to pivot. Microsoft is pivoting. Apple, how many times has Apple pivoted? I mean, they're pivoting all the time. Pick a pivot name. Don't name your company exactly what it does today. or you're going to be pinned. As a simple piece of advice, when you name your company. I heard the guy from PayPal say one time, we hate the name PayPal because we can't. We're going to be a payments company forever. We could have done a, So that's an example. Pick a pivot name. Apple, Amazon.
I'll say this, 2 things come to my mind. Pivoting is terrifying. If you're thinking of doing it and you're scared, of course you are. It's literally jumping off a cliff and then figuring out how to put your airplane together on the way down and hoping you can get it done in time. But at the same time, it's exhilarating. And the other thing I would say is you really got to jump in with both feet. I talk to a lot of people who talk to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about pivoting, I'm thinking about trying this, and I'm going to think about doing a little bit of this. And my experience is that it just doesn't work, and I really see it become a drag on people. If you really got feet in 2 different ponds, you got to jump in. If you're going to do it, it is terrifying, but we have not. We've pivoted. I'm not sure if we've been successful yet.
Sure.
So
No,
take
that's
that
fair.
for what it's worth.
No, that's
but
good.
you
That's
got to
why
go
you're
100%.
Yeah, Aaron.
I would say that it's like everything in life. You don't want to look in the mirror and ask what the worst is. So, you could look at it an ecosystem and say that, but as a company, we ask our partners or clients or users, what do we suck at? We ask all the time. And we get great feedback. And, from a mental standpoint, you're like, man, I really suck. But on the positive side, you're like, wow, now I know what to fix. So, if it's a pivot for a company or a pivot for an ecosystem, look in the mirror and say, what sucks? And fix it. You can't fix it without knowing.
Yeah, I feel like our pivot was just as much of a jump as just actually leaving whatever you did as a career before to start your own business. It's just as scary as, is this going to work? Am I going to, I feel it was the same thing for us to do that as it was to pivot and start a new business. It was the same questions. Is this going to work? Are we going to make it? Are we making the right decisions? Unless you just jump in and do it, you're not going to know. And whenever I put in my 2-week notice, my boss told me, he's like, I respect what you're doing. He's like, if I was your age and had the opportunity, he's like, I'd do it too. He's like, because if you don't, you're going to look back and wonder, should I have done that? And you're going to be something you could regret 40 years from now. So why not?
To that point, one last thought. If you're an entrepreneur, have a support system. If it's a wife or a friend or family, somebody you can just call and get a beer with. There are some best days as an entrepreneur, and there's some days that you just want to jump off the cliff yourself. So make sure you have some sort of support system out there.
It's probably the best way to end. And join me in thanking this panel.